This is Kristen Olson Stone, and her group is launching next Tuesday, May 14th. It meets at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, and I'll have her explain it more. But what I think she is going to teach us, and I'm very excited to learn, is composing um, sketches in watercolor to really firm up your composition. And then I understand that, Kristen, you teach or paint predominantly with palette knife. Is that correct?
Lately, yes. Yeah.
Yes. Which
Lately, as
is,
in like the past 2 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is something I'm really eager to learn. So
Yeah.
I'm very interested to watch your process. So with no further ado, I'll just turn it over to you, and we'll ask you questions as we go along, if that's all right.
That's wonderful. I actually love questions because um, I have so much to share and I don't always think of everything. And sometimes a question will trigger, it's something that I might otherwise forget to share or something like that. And I know some teachers don't like questions or they only like them at certain times, but I'm open to questions at any time. So feel free to just jump in.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and pin you so we
Okay.
can just watch you. And when we ask you a question, it won't flick on us. So, all right. There you go.
So I'll talk just briefly about me as an artist and then my process and how I've sort of evolved into this, what I'm doing right now. So I have been teaching since professionally since 1991. So pretty long time. And I've taught people of all ages. I've taught drawing, figure drawing, fashion design, watercolor painting, gouache painting, oil painting. I have had lots of acrylic painting students, and I'm always happy to work with them. But I don't paint very much in acrylic. So, but I admire the medium because it dries so quickly. And working with a palette knife has given me a new love for bright, punchy colors and hard edges, which are more typically found in acrylic paintings versus oil paintings, where a lot of blending is often done. So I actually started my art career as a watercolor painter only, and I started selling before I went to art school. And then in art school, I learned all the art school stuff. Lots of painting and drawing and figure drawing and portraits and all that kind of stuff. And I fell in love with nature and landscapes and things. And I have shifted and pivoted many times throughout my art career. I think if I were painting the same thing year after year, I would go crazy. But I like to constantly explore and experiment with mediums and subjects. So, so recently I have been painting a lot of home interiors, and I'm going to show you a few of those. And I love the shapes and colors that you can find in home interiors. They're a lot more diverse than what you find in the landscape. Seascapes typically have, daytime palettes, sunset palettes, and landscapes tend to have certain palettes. But when you paint home interiors, you can really go wild with colors, which is a lot of fun. And I've incorporated watercolor sketching into my practice. Um, I sort of think of watercolor sketching for artists as playing scales for musicians. So musicians love to play music, but if they want their music to sound good, professional, easily played, which of course it's not, they have to keep up with practicing and practicing scales, right? And they warm up that way. And that's sort of how I see watercolor sketching. And it's also a lot of fun. So I'm going to show you some watercolor sketches and some palette knife oil paintings and some of my watercolor paintings. And then I'm going to show you what I'm working on right now, which is a 40-inch square palette knife seascape painting of Laguna Beach of Crescent Bay. So that's what I'm going to do today.
That sounds great, Kristen.
Okay,
I'm
good.
excited.
So I have, I'm going to toggle over to my phone, which usually takes 2 tries, not one. And I'm going to switch to my phone. So I'm on my computer right now. And I'm going to switch to my phone, and it'll shoot down on my table here, and I can show some of the artwork. And I also wanted to say, in my last Mastrius group, we usually started each session with critiques. So over the month prior to our meeting, the students would paint, and I would always put in an assignment or two, and then they would also do some other painting on their own. And so they could submit anything they wanted, and I would critique it, and the whole group would get to learn from what I had to say. And when I critique, I keep it very formal. So formal meaning I have a sort of an outline of lines, values, colors, edges, and emotion, which is the hardest one to describe. But I try to say what I have to say based around those principles. So it's really easy to understand and always constructive and always positive. And I always, in my critiques, point out what's going well as what needs a little help, and how those two things can work together to really make your paintings shine. So does that make sense?
That does, and it's great. I mean, we all love critiques. I think they're one of the most important things you can get, and
Yeah,
it sounds like you have a really balanced approach to it, which is, that's great. So
yeah.
I look forward to hearing a critique.
I guess if you want to see live an example of a critique, if you want to pop up one of your paintings onto the screen, if you have a JPEG, I could do a critique right now,
That'd be fun.
shooting from the hip a little bit, but it would be an example, a live example of how
Live example. Okay, let me see if I can do this from here. They're not
I.
they're not on this computer.
How long have you been with Mastrius, Kristen?
I don't know. I had one group last year. I guess it's been a year, maybe a little over a year.
All right,
And
I'm on the wrong computer for this. Leanne, can you do that? Do you have
oh
a painting
dear,
you want
I
to
probably do have photos. This is scary.
share?
Oh,
Leanne's a very talented painter. She's just shy. Yeah,
yeah.
this is my Zoom computer, and I don't have my photos on it.
I think the other thing that's nice about the critiques is it lets everybody see what the other students are doing.
Mhm.
And people get ideas about things to paint, places to go, new materials, new colors, all kinds of things, just from seeing what everybody else does, not just necessarily what I recommend. I am sponsored also by Rembrandt Paints and the Silver Brush Company. And so, and from teaching for so many years, my students have brought to my classes a lot of different brands of paints, brushes, palette knives, and things like that. And so I'm very well versed on supplies and colors, and which oil paints are more buttery and certain colors in different brands and things like that. And so I'm able to make a lot of recommendations based on my experience working with a lot of different supplies.
I'm
Okay,
sorry, I don't know how to upload the picture for you.
Oh, well,
I'm working on it. I'm
okay.
doing it right now. We
Let me
should
just
have
hold it up
found.
to the screen. Can I do that, Kristen?
What's that?
I just hold one up to your screen.
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
This is one
I
of
could
my
do I could do that.
this is one of my favorite ones. So
Oh, I love that painting.
yeah, me too. So I will be okay. Here we go.
Okay,
Can
I'm
you-
gonna remove the pin, Kristen, so you can see her better. How's
Okay,
that?
Can you
that's good. So now for some reason, Lisa, I see your face, and then her picture is in the upper right-hand corner in a small screen, so it's a bit hard for me to see.
Is that better?
Well, if you can swap it so that her face, that's me, if her face shows up or her picture shows up on this big screen, that would be the best.
Kristen, you can pin me on your
Yeah, that's what I
Oh,
just did, was pin her, but
oh,
it didn't. Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
just
how do I pin?
okay. So click on Leanne.
Okay,
There's little dots on the
pin,
right.
got it. Okay,
And
she's pinned.
yep,
Thank you.
good.
Okay, so this is, it looks like a picture of a California poppy.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it has wonderful three-dimensional look, and you've chosen a really hard angle to paint. So it's really beautiful. The contrast between the dark center and the poppy flower petals is gorgeous. And the petals are painted, they're just spot on gorgeous. I would say two things. The center of the poppy, and I know that they're black, but there are different ways to mix darks. And so the color mixture that I typically recommend for a dark, such as the center of a poppy flower, and one that would coordinate with the oranges and reds and yellows in the petals, would be a dark mixed with ultramarine blue, plus Madder Lake Deep, plus a tiny bit of burnt sienna to warm it a bit.
I
And
think I used dioxazine purple,
uh-huh.
uh, probably ultramarine and some sort of brown, but I can't remember. I didn't use black.
Yeah, yeah. So it looks a little bit
Too
blue
cool.
purple. So it needs to be, the color needs to be warmed up a little bit, the dark, and not the center violet, but the outer
Yeah,
dark part should be warmed up a little bit and a little less blue
this part.
because, yes, that part. And also the part that circles the light violet center.
This part.
Yes. So the reason for that is behind the poppy, you have a bluish background.
Yeah.
And orange and blue are opposite colors on the color wheel. So that really helps it pop forward, and it really makes the petals glow, because when you put a complementary color next to a color, it makes it seem more that color.
Hmm.
So in other words, if you wanted to make it more orange, instead of adding orange, you could add blue somewhere near it, and then it visually would appear more orange.
Mhm.
Um, so having that repeated in the center of the flower takes away from the brilliance of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And when you have the view of looking into the flower with all that sunlight around it, you would think that it would be a warm dark
Mhm.
surrounded by cool behind it. So that's my reasoning for wanting it to be warm. The
Okay.
second thing is the green leaf on the lower left is competing. Yes, that one. It's competing a bit. So red and green are opposite, just like orange and blue. And so it's competing a little bit with the red on the right side of the inside of the petal. If you could point to, not that one, the other side there. And so what happens is, if I were to close my eyes and open my eyes, the first place I go is to the center of the poppy, and then I start moving around in all of the petals. And then I go to that green, and I go back and forth between the green and the red on the right, which often happens when you have complementary colors. It directs eye movement, but I get stuck there and I start ping ponging back and forth. And then I occasionally kind of go up to that dark. So I think to solve it, if you could add a little bit of red to that green,
Okay. That's
not glaze
not,
over it. What's that?
so it's not so green, so it's more neutral.
Right. So if you add a little bit of red, just a tiny bit, just to gray it down slightly, then it will still support the bright red in the poppy, but it won't make my eye be bouncing back and forth. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm going to do this painting again for a couple more. Would a grayer blue, a toned down blue help or hinder? Because I love the poppies are so bright orange, and I really like the bright orange. Would
I
it?
think it would hinder it.
Okay.
Now, if this is a commission for somebody,
No, it's
you
not.
can make it work. Yeah, but no, I think the blue is working beautifully, and you've already treated it with a little bit of pink, which is very clever, because the pink picks up warm red tones in the poppy, but because it's cooler and cooler colors recede and warmer colors come forward, it harmonizes with the poppy, but it still sits back from it.
Okay.
And if it was just solid blue, it wouldn't look bad, but it would look more graphic.
Mm-hmm.
That's the term I would use to
Painted that
describe.
background about 5 times to try to find something to work.
Yeah, and you solved your problem. So I think the background is fine.
All
And I
right.
also noticed that there's one very bright spot of blue over on the left side. I'm calling it left because it's my left. Yeah, right there, that really bright spot of blue. But I
Yeah.
like it, it works. And it's, sorry.
All right. Thank you, Kristen.
Sorry, just a second. Let's see if I can mute this. Sorry. I have
You're good.
schnauzers.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I like those extra spots of color. I like in a painting, I like there to have to a painting to be balanced in a way that it's somewhat realistic and somewhat painterly. And so when you have an extra spot of color like that, that looks a little bit unreal, that's nice. That's a good thing. Because if the whole thing is too realistic, then it becomes boring. And it is a painting and it's made with paint, and paint should be bright and colorful at times. And so I like it when paintings are balanced with a little bit of the unreal and a little bit of the real. And that also lends itself to impressionism, which is what I would say my style is. Strongest is impressionism.
Well, thanks. That's a bonus for me. Get a critique.
Yeah.
So that's
Thanks.
how I critique and pointing out what's working. And it's good to acknowledge too, when you tell me you've painted that background several times, it's good to know that you figured it out on your own. You know, it's good to know that it was a struggle, but you figured it out.
Well, it's good to know that it was figured out because I was never sure. Because there's
Right.
a lot of neutrals in this painting. And I thought maybe it had too much color. But it makes me happy, so whatever.
Yeah, and color is one of those things. Color is when paintings are small, and I would describe small as anything 16 inches by 20 inches or smaller. You can have really bright, straight out of the tube, punchy colors, and it works. And you want your painting to sing out from the wall and be noticeable because it's small. And when you have a really big painting, it's also wonderful to have color, but on a larger scale, it becomes something that really influences the room. So it can be a real focal point, it can be wallpaper, and anything in between. And it can really change the whole mood and feeling of a room. And so I tend to paint in larger works, I tend to go a little softer and with my colors. And in smaller paintings, I tend to be a little more punchy because I sort of think of small paintings as having like a Napoleon complex, you know, need to be recognized, you know, Napoleon with his red jacket, and larger paintings can be moody. They can be a lot more things and have a lot more influence. And so anyway, I think your painting is very nicely balanced for color. So,
Thank you
but
so much.
color is taste too. I mean, there are people that I go watercolor sketching with, and I tend to sketch with really bright colors. And most of the people I sketch with don't. They like soft washes and everything. And that's just their taste. So so color is taste too. But yeah, there's a lot to learn with color.
Enjoying the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when new Mastrius videos are added.
Okay. So you can see now my whole desk here. So let me push my computer back out of the way. Okay. So first I'm going to show you some watercolor sketches, and I'm going to show you my favorite new little thing. So can you see this? This is a very tiny watercolor box. All right, so this is my little tiny watercolor. This is my smallest set. I don't know if you can get these in Canada, but I'm sure you can. I got this on Amazon for $15.
That is
And
tiny.
it's really tiny and it holds 12 colors. So I experimented with several different combinations of 12 colors before I came up with this set. And what I love about this is I can take it anywhere. I mean, it just fits in my purse. And the set comes with a magnet clip, and it's a flat clip so it won't damage your paper. And this just sits on the magnet like that. So if you're in a cafe or something like that, I love to sketch in cafes, you can clip it to your sketchbook. Like I could clip this to my sketchbook here. and have it there to paint with. And I chose colors that have a really strong, good tinting strength. I recommend sketching with professional watercolor paint, so you get really good tinting strength. And they're a lot easier to paint with, and they make painting more fun. So I can share this list of colors with you later on, but this is genuine cadmium lemon and a bunch of other strong colors in here. And everything fits into this little makeup pouch that I carry. So I have the magnet clip in there. It also, this set came with this tiny water cup, and it just has a screw-on lid. It has a rubber seal, so you can fill it with water before you go out. I usually don't fill it with water, but I just take a small bottle of water that fits in this bag with me. And this clips onto my sketch pad also, but it's a little tricky because if your sketch pad is at an angle like this, the water can spill a little bit onto your paper. That's happened to me. So I'll usually set this somewhere nearby, but my little set will be clipped on my board. And I have two brushes that are my favorite go-to brushes. This is a silver brush Voyage Black Velvet #6, and that's just a brush where you can paint an entire painting, whether it's a 6" by 8" or up to a 9" by 12" with just one brush. This is a great brush to have. It's a round and it's got a great point on it. And I can easily dip into any of these colors on my palette. The other thing to know with this small set is it obviously has a small mixing space. A lot of these sets come with inner lids that are just metal, and I recommend making sure if you get one that you get one with a white enameled lid so that you're mixing on a white surface, not a shiny, glary metal surface that will, reflect back into your eyes. But you don't have a lot of mixing space, and so what I tend to do is I paint my colors in layers. So I'll hold this up a little bit, but I'll paint the yellow here, and then I'll come back with a darker yellow. I'll paint a light violet and then a darker blue and so on. And so I let the colors mix on the paper rather than using my mixing space. And I actually really like the look of colors mixed on the paper versus mixed on the palette, because when they mix together on the paper, you get some interesting textures when they dry. I'll just show you a few of these sketches that I've done. And I don't only use that set, I'm going to show you a couple more that I really like.
So Kristen, do you take these sketches and do them in oil later on in the studio?
Sometimes, yes. I did this one in the studio. I did a similar one to this one, but it helps me sort of figure out my colors and how I want to divide up the canvas. You get a lot of compositional practice when you're working on a small scale. This is an 8 by 10 sketchbook, which is a really nice size to have. And it's small, they're quick and easy to do. And you can figure out a lot of things and solve a lot of problems before you start your oil painting or acrylic. So I very often leave white around the edges. And when I'm sketching, I very often also put where I am and my name, and I'll date them. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. So anyway, I've got lots of these things. So this one is Canton mixed media paper. It's a nice bright white paper, but I've moved on from that. Now I typically use this watercolor paper, which is a 90-pound paper. This is a Rembrandt watercolor sketchbook. It's really nice. It's a hardbound sketchbook. What's nice about this is because there's a little space between the outside of the book and the pages are protected. And you can cut these out and sell them too if you want to, or you can leave them in your book. This was a bar. I sat at a bar and sketched the light coming through all the bottles just to play, and that was really fun. And I've got a lot of nice sketches in here. This was some waffles I had with strawberries and blueberries at a cafe, and a teacup. And it's just very relaxing. This was a lesson that I did. I actually shared it with my last Mastrius group. One of my students had gone to Holland, and she had a photo of windmills. It was very, very dull. And she was there on kind of a gray day. And she had some other pictures of a similar scene with a bright blue sky and clouds. And she said, how can I make a painting of this? I want to make a painting from my travel pictures. And So I very often like to add a little life to my compositions. So I just Googled a couple of sheep and I put them here because I could see in her photo some sheep in the distance, but they weren't paintable. And the sheep are sort of looking at the viewer. And then I arranged the windmills and kind of bumped up the color of the houses to a brighter blue, and this one's green, and with the foliage behind it. And I put the sunny sky from her other picture. So we combined a couple of pictures and I taught them how to make a composition. I tend to base my composition on the starting rule of thirds. So this would be the vertical third on the right and the vertical third on the left. And so the sheep are on the right vertical third. In other words, they're not centered and they're not in the corners. And then I have horizontal vertical thirds. So this top windmill is in the top horizontal vertical third, and the sheep are also in the lower vertical third. So that's a kind of a nice place to start when you're thinking about how am I going to compose a painting. So I'm not one for taking a photo and just copying it. I like to work with photos and do something interesting with them. I'll show you just a couple more things. This is another set that I also love. This is a 24 color set. And in any of these 24 color sets, you can actually fit 26 colors. They all come with 24 colors, but once the little pans are unwrapped, you can squeeze in 2 more. So I added opaque white, which is very different than Chinese white in watercolor. It's a thicker, more opaque white, but not quite as harsh as gouache, and silver. So silver is fun to have on your palette sometimes. But this is a really nice set. And I added a little sponge in the middle, just because those are nice to have in place of paper towels. They can be washed out, but this has lots of mixing space as compared to this. So it's a little bit bigger, but it's not that big. And just a couple more things. This is another set. I live in the desert, so I keep all my watercolors in Ziploc bags so they don't get too dried out here. This is a 12 color set. And again, with these metal sets, the 12 color sets, you can fit 2 extra colors in. So I have 14 in here. And this is a really great set to travel with too. And it's got a lot of mixing space. Those are my sets. And then this is a really handy thing. This is a silicone water cup. It's called Faber-Castell Click and Go. And what's nice about it is if you're somewhere where your brush could roll away, it has a rippled top. So the brush can just sit on top if you have to put it down and it won't roll away. And it's the only cup that has that. So those are really nice and they fold down. So I
Where
can
do you get those?
What's that?
Where do you get those cups? Those are
I got this. I have like 3 of them. So I got one on Dick Blick, and I think I got the others on Amazon. And they come in different colors, but they're just really nice and they don't weigh anything. The other thing that's handy to sketch with is a white Posca pen. So sometimes at the end of your sketch, you might want to add some white back or wish you had left some space of white. So this is this sketch I did of a desert house near us. And I don't know if you can see it if I bring this closer, but I put a lot of white scribbles throughout this.
I was going to ask you about those. I was going to be really impressed if you had left that as white paper.
Yeah, me too.
I did leave some white, but not enough. And so I went in with this pen. So what's nice about this specific brand, this Posca pen, is that when it dries, it has a matte finish. And so it looks like watercolor when it's dry, except it also has the mark of a pen. So this is a 7mm bullet tip. And I really enjoy using that. But all of those things, that 14 color set, Posca pen, brushes, everything fits in this size makeup bag, which is still small and very, very portable, very easy to take. This is another brush that's a pretty nice brush. This is a Rosemary R14 dagger brush. So it has, you can make a lot of nice marks with a dagger brush. It has a point and you can also push down and make some flat strokes. What I don't like about this brush is the composition of the hairs. The black velvet brush holds and releases water in a more controlled way, whereas this releases the water more quickly. So I tend to prefer this brush, but I do like this shape. Fortunately, Silverbrush is coming out with some dagger brushes, but I think not till September. I told them they should. And this is another thing that I really love. This is a Diamond 580 TWSBI refillable fountain pen with an F nib. So it has a fine point, F is for fine. And I fill it with archival document ink, and it's wonderful. I used to use the little, either the Sharpie permanent ink pens or the Microns 0.05s, and I just went through package after package after package. This pen was $50 and the ink bottle was $20, and it's worth every penny. It's paid for itself many times because I can just keep refilling it and I don't have to keep buying those packages of pens. So anyway, that's a little bit about sketching. And I sort of evolved, I guess I should take this out of here, from sketching into doing some more intricate watercolors. I used to paint a lot of watercolors of landscapes and things, but I kind of got into these home interiors and I love doing all the detail. I'm taking this out of the package because it's so shiny. But you can see the range of colors that you can play with inside of a home interior. And there's a lot of things to balance here, but it's just a lot of fun. And I've been painting in this style where I've been leaving a lot of white in between my brush strokes. And I really like the effect of it. So
I like that, Kristen. That's a beautiful little painting.
thank you. This is another one here. This is another room interior, just kind of a light, sunny, bright, fun, inviting space. This one is another one. This is a little bit bigger. This is a tropical home interior. Can you see it, or should I take the plastic off?
I can see it okay.
Once I see it. Did you use the Oscar pen quite a bit on that one?
No, so these are painted on 300 GSM Arches watercolor paper. I don't typically use those Posca pens unless I'm sketching.
Okay.
So for these, I just paint carefully.
Yeah, it
Like,
looks like there's lines in your leaves, the green leaves.
no, those are just places where I've left the white paper. The other thing is Arches paper is not as bright white. So if you were to paint white on it, it would show up more. Whereas I think that it's out of the package. The white of the paper in Arches is not quite as bright a white. Sorry.
Kristen, you mentioned an opaque white watercolor. What brand
Yes.
is that?
I have it right here. It's Rembrandt.
I was not aware that there was such a thing. A lot of my friends just use a white gouache.
You can use white gouache, but it's a little bit harsh.
Okay.
So I prefer opaque white. So it's just a little bit softer and it's more versatile. So if you were to use white gouache and mix it with watercolor, it would look sort of grainy and washed out, and the end result of the paint application would just look sort of like you painted it and then got too much water on it and then maybe wiped it off. It just doesn't have a good look. But you can use this opaque white and mix it with a transparent color such as permanent red and get some really beautiful, slightly opaque tones that still blend with watercolor that aren't too gouache-like. And you can also use it, if you don't put too much water with it, it almost has the same effect of gouache, but it's just a little softer. It's really a nice color. It's called opaque white.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, there are 3 kinds of white. There's another one called transparent titanium white. And that's a good one if you wanted to glaze over a misty meadow and create the look of fog. That's the one to use. And there's a color called Chinese white. That's the old one that's been around for a long time. I never recommend that because, first of all, if you buy a tube of it, it'll be dried up in a year. It doesn't last very long in the tube, whereas this one does. And it doesn't have quite the same tinting strength as this. And it's a little cooler white, and this is slightly warmer. So I like this one better. So I also do I like to paint things like this. I was doing birds for a while just with a white background because their colors are so bright and vibrant. And this is just on sketching paper. So I'll show you now some oil paintings, some palette knife oil paintings. And I didn't know that this is going to be so tiny, so I'm just going to take this out of the package. I keep everything in these acrylic sleeves when they're dry. So this is, I'm gonna try to hold it so you can see the texture. Can you see that pretty well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is the palette knife painting. This is an 11" by 14". And I love with palette knife painting, you can mix your color on the palette and then you can put these great big scoops of bright paint and just sort of leave them and not do too much blending. You can blend with a knife. You can see I've blended back here some of the white into the blue water, but you can also get these nice bright colors and a lot of separation with the elements, and the textures that you get with palette knife painting are so interesting as compared to paintings that are done with brushes. And I love brushes and I have nothing against brushes, but I've really been having fun with palette knife paintings. And the color application. And what I have found in my teaching is a lot of my art students struggle with color and they really struggle when it comes to blending. So, you start a painting, you start off blocking your shapes in and you think you're doing well. And then you sort of get to where all your shapes are filled in, and then you start to add the detail and you're working wet on wet. And all of a sudden you're blending and blending and blending, and everything in your painting looks gray and sort of mid-range value. And all of a sudden your painting doesn't look as exciting anymore. You've lost your design. And so what they usually try to do is start adding more detail, but that makes things worse. So I try to teach about how to make a strong design and then have color shapes that work with each other, and then areas of detail where colors are sort of directing the detail as well, and keeping your painting strong and more colorful and textured. And I found that my students that have switched to palette knife, that are the ones that are used to painting with brushes, are really, really, really happy with the results, and they're surprised at how fast they can paint. It's a lot faster process working with a palette knife than working with brushes. It also lends a more contemporary look to the artwork. And that's in right now. So this is another one. This is a sunset painting of Maui Secret Cove, which is over.
I like the textures in that one a lot, Kristen.
Yeah.
I can really see them.
Yeah. And on this one, I really pushed the colors a little bit. So I made this a brighter blue than it would look if you were there in person, but it's a painting. And I tend to push colors not throughout the whole painting, but just here and there. And I really like the effect of this bright blue back here. And it works also because this is a 9 by 12, so this is a pretty small painting, but it's still balanced with these violet grays and the ocean's gray down because it's evening, but then you've got this bright blue here and this bright orange in the sky. And that's kind of what I was talking about when we were discussing that painting of the California poppies, is you can have areas of bright color and you can still have some that are grayed down. But a much faster way to paint. I do quite a few paintings of Hawaii. This is a fun one. This is one that I did. I did the small painting first in palette knife. I did a watercolor sketch of it too, and then I did a small one in palette knife, and then I did a 30-inch square, whoops, upside down in oil. So I did a vertical one, and then I decided it would make a nicer square. This one also has a lot of nice texture, just a table setting outside under a blooming apple tree, very springy.
Kristen, what surface do you prefer for your palette knife oil paintings?
So my favorite surface to paint on is a medium tooth prime canvas, and usually I prime I buy acrylic primed canvas, and then I add another layer of acrylic primer before I start working on it. So I like that medium tooth, but I like to have it really well primed. So I do not like linen. I know linen is supposed to be the best, but in my experience over time, linen becomes a bit brittle, and I see a lot more cracking on paintings that are painted on linen. So, and it also has kind of an older, it has an older look. And I really find, I sell a lot of paintings, and I find that, that canvas has a more contemporary look. And so that's why I typically like to use just cotton canvas. And these are cotton canvas boards. And I do the same thing with these. I just, will add some gesso to them. This is another one this is another 11 by 14 of Hawaii. This is from the Big Island, but still lots of detail that you can get. I don't know if you can see all of these small strokes here, in the detail in this painting, but you can still get a lot of detail with palette knives. A lot of people think that you can't, but you can, and you can combine them with brushes also. But sometimes I use a combination of brushes and palette knives. And so in the Mastrius classes, I will upload watercolor lessons, watercolor sketching lessons, and also I'm going to toggle back to my face here.
I'm not a palette knife painter. Do you use mediums with palette knives like you do sometimes with oil paints? Or
That's a very good question. I don't use any medium at all. I have used mediums in the past, and when I paint with brushes, I sometimes use Gamblin solvent-free gel or Gamblin liquid medium. And I paint with Cobra water mixable oils for the most part.
okay.
I still have a lot of traditional oils in my art closet. And so you can mix the water mixable oils with the traditional oils.
Really?
And yeah, so I don't use any paint thinner. I just put paint on my palette, mix it, and put it on the canvas, and that's it.
How do you clean your brushes if they've got the oil and the water?
So if I'm painting with a palette knife, I just wipe them off on a cloth. No cleaning brushes, which is really, really nice. And if I'm using brushes, I use these silver brush Bristlon brushes. I'll show you. So these are just a couple of them. Either they come in short handle or long handle. The short handle are nice to travel with, but they have synthetic bristles. And when you paint with water mixable oils, you need to use synthetic bristles, because if you do use water and mix it with the oil, which I do sometimes when I'm going to do my drawing with a brush, then you need to have the synthetic bristles. The hog's hair bristles, the traditional hog's hair bristles, when they get wet, they become very limp. And so for some reason, when you dip them in paint thinner, they don't become limp, but it's only when you dip them in water. So, but anyway, good question. Yeah, I've moved away from mediums. So it's also kind of it's not non-toxic because I still use cadmium colors, but it's non-hazardous. So even though Gamblin Gamsol, which is the odorless paint thinner, that's probably the best one, doesn't have a smell. It has a little smell, but you're still breathing something that's bad to breathe and is hazardous to breathe. And it's better if you can not use paint thinner at all, which you don't have to. So that's another one of the wonderful things about painting with palette knives is you don't need medium, you don't need paint thinner. You just need a couple of knives and some well-primed canvas and some paint. And you can.
Do you have any suggestions for palette knife brands or favorite ones or anything
Yeah,
like
my
that?
favorite ones I'll show you, and then I'll take you over to my big canvas.
Okay.
So these are some of my favorite knives and one that I don't like. So when I started working with palette knives, I bought like 15 different knives. And they're about $5 or $6 each. I bought these on Dick Blick, and they were just the general Dick Blick brand. It says they're made in Italy, and they've been great. So I have taught students who've had bad knives where the metal part comes out of the handle and spins around, and they have all kinds of problems with them. I haven't had any problems with these. So I really like the ones with a rounded tip. I don't know if you can see this tip, but it's rounded, as opposed to the ones with the pointy tips. The pointy tips kind of make these scratchy looking marks in the canvas and in the paint that I don't like. And the rounded ones don't, and I have a lot more control. I can still use the side of the knife if I want to make a scratchy mark. But when you have one that has a pointy tip, it's a very sharp point, you kind of can't get away from making those scratches. This one is a combination where it has points on the sides, but a rounded tip. I don't like this one. So I use it sort of in the beginning of my painting when I'm just blocking in my color shapes, but even having these points on the side, I don't like. You can see this one is completely round all the way around. See, the sides are rounded. So I get really soft marks. It doesn't interfere and it doesn't make scratchy marks. So I can do even a 40 by 60 painting. I'll use these sizes. I have some bigger ones as well, but I pretty much always stick to these rounded tips. So can you order from Dick Blick in Canada?
I don't know.
Oh,
I'm in the US and I order
yeah, you're in
from them
Colorado, so
probably
you can
too
go.
often. So,
You're in Colorado, right?
yes, I am.
Yeah. So you can order from Dick Blick.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, that's what I've been using, and I have lots of them, and they hold up. I'm not the nicest person to my art supplies. They hold up to me. So that says something. And I paint every day. So would you like to see what I'm working on?
Please.
All right, so I'm going to take my phone over to my other tripod, which is set up pointing on my canvas, and I'll toggle back and I'll see you in just a second. Okay. I'm going to toggle back now.
Beautiful.
So I just have to put my gloves on. Hello.
Hello.
So can you see the whole painting? You can't see the top of it. So I raised it up because I've been working or getting ready to work on the flowers in the front, and you can't really see my monitor, can you? Let me just turn it a little bit. You see the picture on my monitor?
Yes, we can see it now.
So there's a lot of status flowers here, these purple status flowers, and they're going to come up over the ocean. So when I paint a landscape, I typically work from back to front. So I worked on the sky a lot. I've been working on this mountain ridge here, the horizon and so on, and sort of building my layers as I go forward. But I also need to have the whole canvas filled in at one time. So I can't like completely finish the sky and then completely finish the ocean. There's still going to be a lot of painting the whole canvas, but I try to work as much as possible from back to front. And so I've built in some greens down here and a few red flowers, but I need to put the status flowers up over the ocean, but I don't want to put them on until this is complete, which it's not quite complete. But I'm just going to show you how I would add one here over on the right. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Kristen, did you modify the photo that your references?
Oh yeah, I modify everything. Yeah, so I still have to, this is just blocked in dark, so I also typically work from dark to light in oils. And so I've blocked in this dark here, but I'm going to be building up layers of other colors of green and foliage. I'm going to put palm trees in. There's some palm trees at the end of this point that I'm going to put here. They go all the way up in front of the sky. I'm going to be lightening these rocks and working on this cliff and so on. So it's a pretty big painting, so it still needs quite a bit of work. It usually takes me about a week to finish one this big.
I was going to ask how long it takes.
Yeah, about a week.
Do you have problems working, wet on wet if it's taking you a week, you're not giving it time to dry between? Or is that an advantage of palette knife?
I like actually when the paint is still wet, but it tends to dry faster than I want it to usually. But that's okay. I can work on it whether it's wet or whether it's dry. So it's not a problem either way. So I'm gonna mix, I have cobalt blue and ultramarine blue mixed on my palette. And I'm gonna put just kind of a dark flower shape here. So I put the paint on the back of my knife and apply it like this. Kind of have a light touch. So when you're painting on canvas, it gives a little bit, whereas you're painting on a board, it's a harder surface. So you have to touch it more delicately when it's a board, and when it's on stretched canvas, you have to touch it delicately also. But a lot of times it even sticks to the knife a little bit, and you can see how it's pulling. I don't know if you can see that. So then on top of that, this is a warmer dark. On top of that, I'll go over it with some light violet, like this. And then a still lighter color. So if I have a warm dark, I try to make the light cooler. So I try to have my temperatures going in opposite directions. So if my dark was cool, I would have the light be warmer, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I apply the paint. I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in a little more. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that was kind of far back, wasn't I? So the other next thing with palette knife painting is, let's say I want to mix some greens up. I don't have to rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse my brush to switch from working with purple to green. I can just take the same knife, completely wipe it off in my block, which takes 2 wipes, and then I can switch right over to mixing greens. And that's another reason that you can paint faster. If you're painting with lots of brushes, then you don't have to keep using the same brush and rinsing it, but most people don't. So if I
Right,
wanted
but
to just
then you have
decide-
to clean them.
Oh, you don't? It's wonderful. So if I use just the side of my knife like this, I can make really nice thin lines. So like if I wanted to create a branch here for this, or it's not a branch, a stem, for the stylus flower, for instance, I can do that very easily. So the ocean color underneath is dry. I haven't worked on it since Friday, and today's Monday, so I've had a couple days to dry. People often ask me, did the water mixable oils dry slower? And they don't, they dry in the same amount of time.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. I was thinking maybe they dried faster.
Well, what I found with oil paints is that some colors dry faster and some colors dry slower, whether they're water mixable or traditional. So ultramarine blue tends to dry really fast, no matter which brand it is. And I don't know why that is. It's made with sulfur. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. Cadmium colors take a really long time to dry. Well, longer than other colors like ultramarine blue. Turquoise is a color that dries pretty fast. Phthalo colors dry pretty fast. Burnt sienna dries fast. So it's just certain colors just tend to dry faster than others. But it's a beautiful way to be able to apply paint. So then if I wanted to soften some of those edges, I can get some turquoise. You can't see me, but I'm mixing right now some turquoise and titanium white. And so if I wanted to come back and work around some of these edges, I have the paint on the back of my knife. And I can just kind of come around here and do some blending. So you see, you can blend also with the knife if you want to. Now, when you blend, you just like with a brush, you'll pick up some of the other color. Just wipe it very lightly, and you won't take all the paint off the back, but you'll take some. And you wanted to put, let's say you wanted to put a little, you thought your shape was too solid, you wanted to put a little air hole in there. You can just put it in so easily.
You make it look easy anyway.
So, and then the other thing that I really like that happens sometimes with palette knife, can you see the marbling in here where there's sort of a white streak in with the blue?
Mm-hmm.
So that happens sometimes, and I like to just leave those. Because again, I like that look of colors mixing on the canvas versus colors just mixed on the palette. So anyway, that's a little bit about palette knife painting. I'm going to zoom back out again. I'm going to build up the flowers here. They're going to come way up high. I'm going to put some more rocks in back here, soften these edges, and build this up a little more. Work on my cliff, all this foliage, palm trees, lots to do.
It's going to be beautiful. Kristen, we're just about out of time. Do you have anything you wanted to add to wrap us up?
Yeah, so when I teach for Mastrius, as I mentioned in the beginning, I start out with a critique, and I'm going to come back here to the oops, sorry. So when I teach, I typically start with a critique, and then from there, I'll do a demonstration. And so I'll either demonstrate on my desk here where I have one of those special canvas lights that shines down, so I can do a demonstration flat with a palette knife or with brushes or watercolor, or I'll take it over to my easel and work on something there. And sometimes I show how to start a painting, and sometimes I show how to finish. And sometimes I can do a whole 11 by 14 painting in one demonstration.
Oh,
That's impressive.
mhm.
Well, I really enjoyed this. I mean, you're making me want to dig out all my palette knives, which I just used for mixing oil colors. So thank you. You
Yeah,
also make me want to dig
have
out my watercolor.
usually people have a palette knife or two around, even if they typically use brushes. And I would say, just try it. Just try it one day and see what you think. But I do give a lot of instruction on how to hold it, how to make different kinds of strokes using different knives and things. And a lot of emphasis on composition, eye movement, and design, because no matter how beautiful your detail is or your technique, if your design underneath is the sort of the structure of your painting, if your design's not working, your painting's not going to work. So we would put a lot of emphasis in that, on that in my teaching. And I love to
That's
teach.
great.
Yeah, I love to teach. I have a lot to share. And so I look forward to starting this group.
Thank you very
too.
much.
All right.
And
Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate your time. And I will see you next week when we launch the group.
that sounds great. Thanks so much, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Leanne. Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.